Chosen one, stop running, stop wandering, stop looking for shortcuts in a wilderness that was designed to have none. Take a deep breath and listen to the heavy silence of this hour. Have you ever sat in a quiet room late at night and felt the silence pressing down on your chest like a physical weight? You look out the window, you watch the headlights of cars sweeping across your ceiling, then disappearing into the dark. Those people are going home to their comfortable lives. They are going home to their predictable routines, their warm houses, and their easy cycles. They seem to walk through this world without a single spiritual battle. They do not wake up with a sudden ache in their chest. They do not struggle to explain the silent, persistent weight in their souls. They laugh. They build their earthly security. They sleep peacefully. And then there is you, sitting in the dark, carrying an invisible burden that no one else can see or understand. You are struggling to make sense of your current season. You look at your bank account and the numbers are low. You look at your relationships and you see only distance, silence, and closed doors. Your body is tired, your mind is racing, and your prayers feel like they are bouncing off a brass ceiling. In those quiet, painful hours, a voice whispers to you in the dark, "Why is your path so difficult? Why must you fight for every single inch of peace? Is your obedience to God really worth this isolation?" Look at the people around you. They don't pray. They don't seek holiness. They don't care about divine alignment, yet they thrive, they celebrate, and they are happy. Chosen one, hear me clearly today. The wilderness you are walking through is not a mistake. It is not a sign of God's anger. It is a graveyard. It is the graveyard of callings, a vast, silent stretch of time where the dreams and destinies of many were buried. It is the place where 99% of those who were called did not survive. They did not perish because God ran out of power. They did not die because the enemy was too strong. They perished because they could not stand the dry seasons. They perished because they grew tired of the waiting, the silence, and the lack of visible results. They looked at the narrow, steep path ahead, and they turned back. They wanted a God of comfort, not a God of transformation. They wanted the promised land, but they refused the process of the wilderness. Think of the micro scenarios of those who fell. Consider the person who was called to build a ministry. They started with fire, but when the crowds didn't show up and the bills began to pile up, they panicked. They took a high-paying corporate job that required them to lie. They chose the broad road of financial security over the narrow path of faith. They sat in their car in the parking lot of that tall, cold glass building, staring at the steering wheel. Knowing they had traded their prophetic fire for a weekly paycheck, they tell themselves it is just for a season. But seasons of compromise have a way of becoming lifetimes. Or think of the one who was called to a holy marriage. They grew tired of the lonely Friday nights. They grew tired of staring at the empty seat across the table. So they married a counterfeit. They settled for someone who mocked their faith just to stop the waiting. They sit on their bed, looking at the screen of their phone, waiting for a text message. But the silence is too loud, so they compromise. They choose a partner who laughs when they pray, someone who treats their sacred calling as a childish hobby. And now, they sit in a beautiful house, next to a person who is a stranger to their soul, realizing that the loneliness of a bad marriage is 1,000 times heavier than the loneliness of the wilderness. Consider also the one who was called to be a creative force, an entrepreneur of kingdom values. They had the ideas, the vision, the divine blueprints. But when their first 3 ventures failed, and they watched their peers buy houses and travel the world, they let go of the blueprint. They began to copy the cutthroat tactics of the world. They started cutting corners, cheating on their taxes, and exploiting their workers. They got the success they wanted, yes, But when they look in the mirror, they no longer see the reflection of a chosen one. They see a copy of the very system they were called to dismantle. These are the bones that litter the wilderness. The calling on your life is not a badge of honor to show off at parties. It is a target in the spirit realm. You must realize, before you take another step, that this world is not a playground. It is enemy-occupied territory. C.S. Lewis, in his classic work Mere Christianity, wrote a truth that you must write on your heart. Enemy-occupied territory, that is what this world is. A Christian's life consists in mounting warfare. We are living in a world which is in revolt against its creator. Let those words sink into your spirit today. You are behind enemy lines. The moment you were set apart, the moment you said yes to the divine call, you became a target. Every day you wake up, you are not stepping into a neutral zone. You are stepping onto a battlefield. This is why your family doesn't understand you. This is why your old friends slowly drifted away, leaving you out of their gatherings. This is why you feel a constant, silent friction when you try to blend into the crowd. The enemy knows the weight of glory you carry. He knows that if you survive this refining process, you will become a threat to his kingdom. So he does not attack you with a sudden, dramatic blow. He uses the weapon of erosion. He wants to wear you down day by day. He wants you to look at the easy path and think, maybe I am being too extreme. Maybe I should just blend in, get a normal job, and stop talking about holiness. It is too hard to stand alone. This is how the 99% fell. They did not fall in a grand battle. They simply drifted away. Imagine a soldier trying to unpack a picnic blanket on the front line of a war. Imagine them laying out their food, complaining that the ground is muddy and that there are no tables. That is what we look like when we demand comfort in a war zone. We are trying to build a vacation home in a combat area. We seek comfort in the very place where we were called to march. We complain about the dust, the dry wind, and the lack of shade. But the general did not send us to the front line to have a picnic. He sent us to stand our ground. He sent us to take back territory. But look at the scriptures, chosen one. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, Jesus warns us, "Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." The narrow road is not a paved highway with streetlights. It is a steep, winding path covered in dust and sharp rocks. It is walked by the few, and it requires you to travel light. You cannot carry your pride on this road. You cannot carry your need for approval, your toxic attachments, or your self-reliance. Everything that belongs to the old you must be dropped at the gate. If you try to squeeze through the narrow gate with your baggage, you will get stuck. You will become frustrated, and you will be tempted to walk back to the broad road. Look at the bones scattered along the edges of the broad road. They are the bones of chosen ones who chose temporary relief over eternal destiny. They wanted the crown, but they fled from the cross. They wanted the inheritance, but they refused the furnace. Do not join them, chosen one. Do not let the weariness of this dry season make you settle for a counterfeit peace. The refiner is watching your steps. He has not left you alone in the dark. He is simply scraping away the dross. He is forcing you through the narrow gate because he loves you too much to let you rot in comfort. He is separating you from the crowd so that you can hear his voice clearly. It is time to make a final decision. It is time to look at the narrow, dusty road, drop your baggage, and take a step forward. Leave your comment below to seal your commitment to the path. I will walk the narrow path. Let it be your shield and your declaration in the unseen realm. Write it down. I will walk the narrow path and trust the hand that leads you. Chosen one. Let us speak of the first mark, the mark that has claimed the souls of so many who were called to greatness. It is the mark of nostalgia, the dangerous, quiet longing for the place you were delivered from. When the wilderness becomes silent, when the water runs dry, and when the promise seems miles away, a strange thing happens to your memory. The pain of the past begins to fade. The abuse you suffered starts to look like familiarity. The toxicity of your old environment begins to look like warmth. Imagine sitting in your cold kitchen at 3 in the morning. The hum of the refrigerator is the only sound in the house. You stare at the dark screen of your phone. Your thumb hovers over a contact name, a name of someone who used you, lied to you, and broke your spirit. Someone you swore to God you would never speak to again. But tonight, the silence is heavy. Tonight, the desert feels too cold and too vast, and the voice of Egypt whispers in the dark. At least with them, you weren't alone. At least when you were in bondage, you had someone to talk to. At least in Egypt, you had food and shelter. This is the graveyard trap, chosen one. It is the temptation to check on what God has already buried. It is the urge to reopen the graves of relationships He closed, to walk back into the houses He burned down to save you. You convince yourself it is harmless. You tell yourself, I am just checking in. I am just seeing how they are doing. I am stronger now. It won't affect me. But you are not just checking, you are digging up the rot. You are inviting the old chains back onto your wrists. Why does this happen? Why do we crave the very things that broke us? It is because the present is uncomfortable. The wilderness demands that you stand in the unknown. It demands that you trust the invisible hand. And the human mind hates the unknown. The flesh prefers a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven. We would rather serve a cruel master we know than trust a loving Father we cannot see. We forget the whip of the taskmaster. We forget the bitter clay, the straw, and the mud. We only remember the garlic, the leeks, and the meat pots. We romanticize our captivity because our freedom requires faith. C.S. Lewis, in his brilliant book, The Screwtape Letters, exposed this exact strategy of the darkness. He showed how the enemy uses time to paralyze the soul. Screwtape, the senior demon, instructs his nephew Wormwood on how to destroy a man. He tells him to keep the man's mind away from the present. Screwtape writes, "Our business is to get them away from the eternal and from the present. We want them to live in the past or the future. For the past, the enemy uses nostalgia. He paints a beautiful, false illusion over your history. He removes the poison from your memories and covers them with a golden tint. He makes the toxic relationship look like true love. He makes the old, destructive habit look like harmless comfort. The past is a museum, but the enemy wants you to live in it. He wants you scrolling through old photos at midnight, weeping for years you cannot retrieve. He wants you replaying old conversations in your head, wondering what you could have done differently. And for the future, the enemy uses anxiety. He wants you projecting your mind into a tomorrow you cannot control. He wants you worrying about where you will sleep next month. He wants you fearing that you will end up alone, abandoned, and forgotten. Anxiety is a counterfeit future. It is a mental simulation of a tomorrow where God does not exist. It forces you to try to solve problems that have not happened yet, using strength you do not have today. Screwtape hates the present because the present is the only point where time touches eternity. The present is where the cross stands. The present is where grace is active. The present is where the manna falls. God does not give you grace for yesterday. That is gone. He does not give you grace for tomorrow. That is not yet real. He only gives you grace for this exact moment. But as long as you are living in the past or the future, You are useless in the present. You are spiritually paralyzed. You are standing in the wilderness, but your heart is still in Egypt. This is the mark of nostalgia. It turns your gaze backward. It makes you a spectator of your own ruin. It freezes your feet while the rest of the army marches forward. Think of the warning in the scriptures, chosen one. In Luke chapter 17, verse 32, Jesus speaks 3 simple words. Remember Lot's wife? Think of that moment. Sodom was burning. The angels had dragged her out by the hand. She was on the road to safety. She was on the path to deliverance. But as the fire fell on the city she loved, she stopped. She turned around and she looked back. She did not just glance over her shoulder. She yearned for the comfort she left behind. She valued the familiar luxury of Sodom more than the raw mercy of God. She was unwilling to let go of the lifestyle, the associations, and the status. And in that moment of looking back, she froze. She became a pillar of salt, a monument of regret, a physical representation of a divided heart. This is what happens when you look back at what God has judged. You freeze. Your spiritual progress stops. Your prayers lose their power. Your faith becomes static. You become a monument of what could have been. You cannot walk forward while looking backward. You will stumble. You will fall. You will perish in the dirt. Lot's wife did not die because she was weak. She died because she was divided. Her body was in the wilderness, but her heart was in Sodom. Is your heart still in Sodom, chosen one? Are you still longing for the leeks of Egypt? Are you still looking at the ruins of your old life, wishing you could rebuild them? It is time to drop the spade. It is time to stop digging up what God has buried. The fire has fallen. The past is gone. If you turn back now, you will become salt. You will become a warning to others. But if you press forward, the road will open. The present grace will meet you. The manna for today is waiting. Look at the path ahead. It is narrow, but it is clear. Leave your comment below to seal your heart. I will not look back. Let it be your shield against the ghosts of your past. Write it down. I will not look back. And keep your eyes on the horizon. Chosen one. Let us speak now of the second mark, a mark that is very often disguised as wisdom, a mark that looks like spiritual maturity, but actually carries the quiet poison of death. It is the mark of isolation, the progressive hardening of the heart. When you have been through the fire of betrayal, when the people you trusted most became the ones who wounded you, when the church, the family, or the closest friend left you bleeding on the side of the road, a natural defense mechanism arises within your soul. You look at the wounds, you look at the scars, and you say to yourself in the dark, never again. I will never let anyone get close enough to hurt me. I will build a fortress around my soul. You lock the doors of your heart. You pull down the shades. You establish walls of silence. You stop answering the phone calls. You let the messages pile up unanswered. You reject the hands that try to reach you. You sit alone in your room on a quiet evening. The television screen flickers, throwing shadows on the wall. You have your dinner on a tray. It is silent. You tell yourself this is peace. You tell yourself you are just guarding your peace. You tell yourself that you are in a season of isolation. But you must be honest with yourself, chosen one. There is a massive difference between divine solitude and self-built imprisonment. Divine solitude is where God hides you to speak to your heart. It is a place of preparation. It is a place where you are fed by the Spirit. Self-built imprisonment is where you hide yourself to protect your ego. It is a place where you nurse your resentment. It is a place where you build walls of bitterness. You sit in your room, deciding that you will walk this path entirely alone. You decide that you do not need anyone. You become cynical. You look at every new face with suspicion. You analyze every kind word for hidden motives. You think you are keeping yourself safe, You think you are being wise, but you are actually suffocating your spirit. You are cutting off the oxygen of connection. C.S. Lewis, in his profound book The Four Loves, wrote a warning that strikes like lightning. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round, with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. Read those words again, chosen one. Let them sink deep into your mind. Unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. That is the price of absolute self-protection. The heart that cannot be broken is a heart that cannot feel. It is a heart that cannot receive grace. In trying to save your heart from pain, you seal it in a coffin. You prevent it from growing. You prevent it from loving. And a heart that cannot love is already dead. It is a stone. It is cold. It is lifeless. This is the second mark of the wilderness. Many chosen ones do not die from external attacks. They do not fall to the temptations of the world. They die from internal starvation. They starve their hearts of connection. They choose the safety of the coffin over the risk of the cross. They want the promise of God, but they refuse to be vulnerable. They want to be leaders, but they refuse to love the people. They want to be healed, but they refuse to show their wounds. But look at the scriptures. Chosen one. Look at the promise of the Father. In Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 26, the Lord makes a promise. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Why must God remove the heart of stone? Because a stone cannot absorb water. A stone cannot grow. A stone cannot be molded by the hands of the potter. If your heart is a stone, the rain of heaven will only roll off the surface. The blessings of God will not penetrate. The new wine will not find a vessel. You can pray for hours. You can read the scriptures every day. But if your heart is stone, nothing will change inside. God must break your fortress. He must dismantle the walls you built to keep the world out. He does not do this to expose you to your enemies. He does not do this to leave you defenseless. He does this to expose you to His love. He wants you to have a heart of flesh, a heart that is soft, a heart that is capable of feeling, of trusting, of loving again. Yes, a heart of flesh can be wounded. Yes, it can be broken. But it is also the only heart that can be healed. A stone cannot be healed. A stone can only be shattered. If you are hiding behind a wall of bitterness today, chosen one, if you are locking yourself away because you are afraid of pain, it is time to let the walls down. It is time to trust the Creator with your broken pieces. He is not like the ones who hurt you. He will not break what is bruised. He will not quench what is smoldering. He is the great physician, but He cannot heal a heart that is locked in a casket. Open the door. Let the air in. Let the grace in. Leave your comment below. My heart is open to grace. Let it be your step out of the casket of isolation. Write it down. My heart is open to grace. And let the healing begin. Chosen one. Let us speak now of the third mark, the mark that quietly steals the inheritance of the weary, the mark that tempts you to trade your destiny for a moment of relief. It is the mark of compromise. It is the decision to settle for less. The wilderness is not just a test of your strength. It is a slow, grueling test of your endurance. It is the passage of time that does not seem to align with the promises you were given. When the first few weeks of the desert feel like a spiritual adventure, you are filled with zeal. You are ready to conquer the giants. But then, the weeks slowly turn into months. The months dissolve into years, and the silence of God remains unbroken. A deep, heavy weariness begins to settle into your very bones. It is a fatigue that sleep cannot cure. It is the exhaustion of hope deferred. You wake up at 3 a.m. The house is quiet, cold, and dark. You look at your life and realize nothing has changed. Your bank account is still hovering near empty. Your relationships are still fractured or non-existent. The dreams you carried in your youth now feel like old fading photographs. You scroll through your phone in the quiet of the night. You see others celebrating their promotions. You see them posting pictures of their new homes, their happy families, their milestones, and a quiet, dangerous whisper begins to echo in the corners of your mind. Why are you still waiting? Did God really speak to you? Maybe you heard him wrong. Maybe this desert is not a preparation. Maybe it is your permanent home. It is in this precise state of exhaustion that the enemy presents his most dangerous trap. It is not an open attack. It is not a blatant temptation to sin. It is an opportunity. A door opens. But it is a door that requires you to bend your standards. An offer is made, a job that promises financial comfort, but requires you to trade your integrity. A romantic relationship that offers immediate companionship, but requires you to ignore your values. A path that looks smooth, easy, and comfortable, but leads you away from the calling of God. The voice of compromise is soft, reasonable, and comforting. It whispers, "It is not that bad." God knows your heart. He understands how tired you are. If you do not take this opportunity, you might end up with nothing at all. Be practical. Do not let pride keep you waiting in the dust. And because you are exhausted, because you are tired of the loneliness, tired of the struggle, tired of being the one who waits, you are tempted to say yes. You are tempted to settle for what is available rather than wait for what is promised. You tell yourself, "This is good enough. Maybe this is how God is answering my prayer. Perhaps I was expecting too much." But deep within your spirit, the Holy Spirit is grieving. There is a restlessness in your soul that you cannot quiet, because you know, deep down, that this is a counterfeit. It is a substitute. It is the enemy offering you a cheap crown today, so that you will never wear the heavy gold of the throne tomorrow. C.S. Lewis, in his masterpiece The Weight of Glory, captured this tragedy with a picture that remains etched in the mind. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum, because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. Close your eyes for a moment, chosen one, and visualize that child. He is sitting in a narrow, dirty alleyway. The air is thick with smoke. The ground is cold mud. He is completely focused on shaping a small, dirty lump of clay. He is proud of his mud pie. He thinks it is the greatest thing in the world. Why? Because he has never seen the ocean. He has never felt the warm sand beneath his bare feet. He has never heard the thunderous roar of the waves crashing against the shore. He cannot comprehend the vast, endless blue horizon. So when a kind hand reaches down and offers to take him away from the slum to the sea, he pulls his hand away. He cries. He says, "No, I want to stay here. I want to keep my mud." This is the exact picture of spiritual compromise. When we settle, we are that child in the slum. We hold on to a toxic, ungodly relationship because we are afraid of the quiet bed. We stay in a career that requires us to lie and cheat because we are afraid of financial lack. We settle for a low-value version of ourselves because we are too tired to climb the mountain. We are far too easily pleased. We think a little relief from our current pain is better than the weight of glory. We sell our birthright for a single bowl of stew just to quiet our growling stomach for one afternoon. Look at the history of the chosen, written in the Holy Scriptures. In the book of Numbers, chapter 11, verses 5 and 6, the children of Israel stood in the dry desert sand and cried out, "We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna." Consider the sheer spiritual blindness of their cry. They were slaves in Egypt. Their backs were scarred by the heavy whips of Pharaoh's taskmasters. Their newborn sons were thrown into the Nile River to drown. They groaned under the intolerable weight of oppression. But in the dryness of the wilderness, they forgot the pain of the whip. They only remembered the taste of the onions. They craved the leeks of their captivity. They looked at the white, supernatural manna falling from heaven every morning, bread baked by the hands of angels, and they grew disgusted by it. They said, "We are tired of this miracle. We want the garlic of our slavery." This is the poison of compromise. It distorts your memory. It makes you value the food of your captivity more than the freedom of your destiny. It makes you willing to return to the chains of Egypt just to escape the necessary processing of the wilderness. But you must hear this today, chosen one. Do not trade the manna of heaven for the leeks of Egypt. The wilderness is dry, yes. The waiting is painful, yes. But the potter has not abandoned you to the dust. He is not keeping you in the desert to destroy you. He is emptying you of Egypt so that he can fill you with the promised land. He is preparing you for the sea. He is preparing you for the infinite holiday of his glory. Drop the mud. Step away from the alleyway of compromise. Clean your hands of the counterfeit. If you are standing at the edge of a compromise today, if you are about to sign your name to something that grieves your spirit, if you are about to let someone back into your life who has always brought you back to the dark, look up. Remember the sea. Wait for the King. Leave your comment below. I will not settle for less. Let this be your declaration to the spiritual realms. A vow that you will not trade your crown for clay. Write it now. I will not settle for less. And keep your eyes fixed on the horizon. Chosen one. Let us speak now of the fire. The fire that has terrified so many who entered the wilderness. The fire that 99% of people mistook for their final destruction. When the flames began to rise, they saw the ashes of their plans. They felt the heat of isolation. They watched their reputations, their security, and their comforts turn to dust. And they cried out in the dark. They screamed, "God has abandoned me. The enemy has won. This is the end of my story." But they did not understand the nature of the flame. They did not see that the fire was not sent by the enemy to consume them. It was permitted by the Father to refine them. The wilderness is not a prison sentence, chosen one. It is a crucible. It is the place where the metal is separated from the dross. It is the laboratory of the King. Let us look closely at the pain you have carried lately. The weight in your chest when you wake up. The heavy, suffocating silence of your living room. The sudden, unexplained collapse of projects you poured your sweat and tears into. Let us look at a specific scenario. You spent years building a business, a career, or a ministry. You did everything right. You prayed over the blueprints. You worked late into the night, sacrificing your rest. You gave your tithes and helped the poor. You acted with absolute honesty, even when others lied to get ahead. Yet, despite your faithfulness, you watched the doors lock from the inside. You stood in the empty corridor, holding keys that no longer fit any lock. You looked at the silent desks of the office you built. You listened to the silence of the phone that used to ring constantly. Your partners, whom you trusted, walked away without a word. your bank account drained to zero, and you felt the cold sting of betrayal. You felt the burning heat of public shame. Or consider another scene. A woman who was once the center of her social circle. She was always there to help others, always offering a listening ear. But when her storm hit, when her life fell apart under the weight of grief and loss, her phone went silent. She sat on her couch, watching the sunset through the window. She scrolled through her contacts, realizing there was not a single person she could call. She watched others post pictures of gatherings she was no longer invited to. She felt the burning fire of being forgotten. It felt like punishment. It felt like you were being broken for no reason at all. You asked, why did my faithfulness lead me to this furnace? Why did my obedience end in this ash heap? But the builder is not an amateur. He is the master architect. He does not allow a single spark of pain without an eternal purpose. He does not waste your tears. C.S. Lewis, in his profound work The Problem of Pain, wrote a truth that explains the mystery of your suffering. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Let those words sink into your spirit. His megaphone. When you were comfortable in your cottage, you could not hear him. You were deafened by the ticking of the clock, by the quiet hum of your television, by the comfortable, shallow gossip of your friends. You were satisfied with a small, flat life. You were happy in that cottage. It was cozy, yes, but the roof was leaking, the foundation was rotting, and the walls were too narrow. You wanted to stay there forever, but God had a different plan. He did not want you to live in a shack. He wanted to build a palace. So, in his mercy, God turned down the music of your pleasures. He quieted the crowd around you. He allowed the cottage to catch fire. He made the place of your comfort uninhabitable, because he was preparing you for the palace. The dismantling of your life was not an act of anger. It was the clearing of the site. Before a cathedral can be built, the old, decaying shack must be torn down. The ground must be excavated. The builder had to clear the debris of your self-reliance. He had to dig through the soft dirt of your illusions. He had to scrape until he reached the bedrock of your faith. And the only way to find the bedrock is to remove everything that can shake. The heat you feel is not the fire of judgment. It is the fire of the refiner. Look at the scriptures, chosen one. In the book of Zechariah, chapter 13, verse 9, the Lord reveals this sacred process. This third I will put into the fire. I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name and I will answer them. I will say, they are my people. And they will say, the Lord is our God. And look at the words of Job, who lost everything in a single day. He lost his children, his wealth, and his health. He sat in the ashes, scraping his sores with a piece of broken pottery. Yet, in Job chapter 23, verse 10, he declared, but he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. Job did not say, I hope I survive. He said, I shall come forth as gold. He knew the fire was not a graveyard. It was a workshop. Consider the silver refiner. How does he refine the metal? He does not throw the silver into the flames and walk away to attend to other things. He does not leave the workshop. He sits beside the furnace. He pulls his chair close to the heat. His eyes are fixed on the crucible with intense, unwavering focus. He does not look away for a single second. He regulates the temperature with perfect precision. If the fire is even a fraction too cold, the impurities will remain trapped inside the metal. If the fire is even a fraction too hot, the silver will be scorched and ruined. He sits in the heat. He feels the sweat on his brow. He shares the environment of the crucible. And how does he know when the process is complete? He knows the silver is pure when he looks down into the bubbling liquid metal. and he sees his own reflection. As long as the surface is cloudy, as long as the grey, bubbly dross covers the silver, he keeps it in the fire. He scoops away the impurities as they rise to the top, but the moment the silver becomes a perfect mirror, the moment he can look down and see the details of his own face reflected in the metal, he immediately pulls the crucible out of the heat. You are in that crucible right now, chosen one. The heat is intense. The liquid is boiling. You feel like you are melting. You feel like your identity is disappearing. But the refiner has not left the room. He has not abandoned the furnace. He is sitting right next to you. His eyes are locked onto your soul. He is holding the temperature. He will not allow you to burn for a second longer than is necessary to clear the dross. He is waiting to see his reflection in your character. He is waiting for the pride to burn away. He is waiting for the self-reliance to melt. He is waiting for the bitterness to evaporate. He wants to see his love in your eyes, his patience in your heart, his trust in your stillness. And the moment he sees his image clearly, he will stretch out his hand. He will pull you out of the fire, and you will step forth, shining like pure gold. You will not even smell of smoke. Do not fear the flame, chosen one. Do not run from the furnace. Do not try to escape the heat by making a compromise. Stand still in the fire. Let the dross go. Let the old ways burn. Trust the hand that holds the crucible. Leave your comment below. Refine me in the fire. Let this be your surrender to the master refiner, a declaration that you trust his temperature. Write it now. Refine me in the fire, and watch the dross turn to gold. Chosen one. Look up. The smoke is clearing. The dust of the demolition is settling, and the heat of the furnace is beginning to cool. You are standing on the boundary of a new land. The wilderness is behind you. The graveyard where 99% of those who entered perished is fading into the mist. You made it. You did not look back. You did not freeze into a pillar of salt. You did not lock your heart in the casket of self-protection. And you did not settle for the mud pies of compromise. You stood firm in the fire. You allowed the builder to tear down the cottage. And now, as you look ahead, you see it. The foundations of the palace, the vast blue ocean of the promise. You realize that every door that slammed in your face was not a rejection. It was the architect blocking the path to the cottage to force you toward the palace. Every ending you mourned was a necessary demolition. Every dry season was a preparation for the rain. You are not arriving in the new season broken and defeated. You are arriving refined. You are arriving like gold. Let us look at a specific scenario. Consider the morning when you finally wake up, and the weight that has sat on your chest for years is gone. For the first time in a decade, you do not wake up with anxiety racing in your pulse. You walk to the window, and instead of seeing the grey, dry dust of the wilderness, you see the sunlight filtering through green leaves. You hear the morning birds singing. You make your coffee in silence. But it is not the suffocating silence of isolation anymore. It is the sacred silence of peace. The phone rings, and it is not a bill collector. It is not a toxic person demanding your energy. It is a friend who loves you, calling just to check on you. You walk into your workplace, and the projects that once felt like heavy stones around your neck now flow like water. The people you meet look at you with respect. They do not see the scars of your furnace. They only see the light of your refinement. You realize that the long night is over. The morning has arrived. C.S. Lewis, at the end of his masterpiece, The Last Battle, wrote of this beautiful transition into the true reality. But for them, it was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in this world had only been the cover and the title page. Now at last, they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, in which every chapter is better than the one before. Let those words wash over your spirit, chosen one. Chapter 1 of the great story. Your past was only the cover. Your trials were only the title page. The loneliness, the isolation, the wilderness, they were just the introduction. They were the necessary background to make the main story meaningful. Now, the true story begins. A story written by the finger of God. A story where every chapter exceeds the last, where the joy is deeper, the peace is stronger, and the glory is weightier. Do you understand the depth of this? If you are reading chapter 1, it means the introduction is closed. You cannot go back to the cover. You cannot rewrite the title page. Let it go. Leave the dust in the dust. The builder is moving into the house. He is filling the palace with his presence. Look at the scriptures, chosen one. In the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verse 5, the one seated on the throne declares, "I am making everything new." He did not say, "I am repairing the old." He did not say, "I am patching up your old wounds." He said, "I am making everything new." When God makes something new, He does not use the materials of your past. He does not patch up the old, toxic relationships that drained your soul. He does not rebuild the career that was built on compromise. He gives you a completely new foundation, new relationships that carry no toxicity, but instead carry mutual honor, new opportunities that require no compromise of your values, a new heart that is soft, healed, and open to joy. Consider the patriarch Abraham. When he separated from Lot, Lot chose the well-watered plains of Sodom, seeking immediate comfort and easy wealth. But that wealth was located in a city marked for destruction. Abraham, however, stayed in the rugged hills of Canaan, trusting God in the quietness. And in Genesis chapter 13, verses 14 and 15, the Lord said to Abraham, "Lift up your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see I give to you and your descendants forever." God did not tell Abraham to look down at the dry ground. He told him to look at the horizon, to see the vastness of the promise. Lot chose by sight and lost everything in the fire of Sodom. Abraham chose by faith and inherited a nation. You are like Abraham today, chosen one. You did not choose the Sodom of compromise. You did not settle for the easy, watered plains of the counterfeit. You stayed on the mountain of faith. You endured the dryness. And now, the Lord is saying to you, lift up your eyes. Look northward, southward, eastward, and westward. Everything you see is your inheritance. The old season died yesterday. The new season begins today. The decree has been signed in the courts of heaven. The builder has finished the demolition. The palace is ready. It is time to cross the boundary. It is time to step into the inheritance. Pack your bags. Leave the ashes behind. Do not bring a single piece of the old cottage into the palace. Leave the rags of your self-protection at the door and walk through the gates of the palace. Leave your final comment below. I claim my promised land, Amen. Let it seal your transition from the wilderness to the palace. Let this be your anchor in the spiritual realm. Write it now. I claim my promised land, Amen. And step into the great story. Pause.